Very good, thank you. Wanted to say thank you again for your positive comments in the past about the downtown plan. I don't know if you had any questions ahead of time.
I do not.
Before tonight's.
I do not. Do
teacher
you have
adoption.
any things that you need to share with me?
We've been working on this for years. It's a dream come true. And tonight, it's kind of like Santa came early. This is years in the making. It's not just our idea. It's many people who've been, and there's going to be many people who are really appreciative to see it move forward. We know we've got many years ahead of us. But that we've already begun, and that we've gotten some direction from Stantec who've been fantastic. And now that we have the support, we really feel good about where we're at, and just wanted to make sure that you felt good as well. If you have any questions, ADBA would love to help answer any of those questions, and most of us, I think, if not all of us, will say yes to being plan ambassadors moving forward, which was kind of a key thing. We know that there's going to be issues like, when we bury the utilities, it's going to be a probably significant period of time where sales may be impacted. And so retail obviously will need to get ahead of that. But that we're starting, it's darkest right before the light. We know that this is the turn that we feel is right for more walkable, bikeable downtown, and a place for people to identify with, make memories with their families, connect with their neighbors. So thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely.
Congratulations.
Councilmember? Hey, how you doing, man? See you too. There's so many variations. I don't recognize it. Did you clean up so well? That was the only part that was disagreed with. First off, congratulations.
Well, I mean, you can have it. Well, he just said that he didn't appreciate it and stuff like that. Well, that was nice. A whole world. You want to say what else?
When it was, yeah,
okay.
But it was great.
Hey, how are you doing? Want to come over and say hi?
Say hello to y'all.
I see you too. How you doing?
I'm doing okay.
Doing good?
Are you sick? Where have you been going? I'm staying over here. Oh my gosh.
Or to hear you.
Yeah. We're gonna. Lori. We're gonna switch. We're gonna put her over here. We're gonna put her in the audience.
And then maybe it's someone yeah, no, we do. What are you doing up here?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm
Ready to get
Yes. Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, I'll push my stuff way over here, out of the way. No, I hope you feel better, seriously. Is this? How about you? This is mine, right? Yeah. You got yours? All right, this is.
Good seeing you.
You know y'all favorite, right? You know that, right?
They say that once you stay together.
Yes.
How are you?
Oh my God.
Okay.
Yeah. Ready? Born ready.
Oh my God. You're not going to tear this into this council.
Yes, we are. Good evening. On behalf of our town council and staff, welcome to our scheduled town council meeting for December 17, 2019. This is our last meeting of the year. So I'd like to welcome those who have joined us tonight and those who are watching on YouTube live stream. Thank you for joining us as well. I will now call the meeting to order, and we will start with a member of our community for invocation. I would like to call on Pastor David Garcia from Focus Church here in Apex to give our invocation.
Good evening. Thank you. On behalf of Focus Church, I want to say how excited we are to be back here in Apex. We were gone for a little while and are so excited for the future together. I'm honored and thank you for your time in allowing me to do the invocation and prayer and welcome and ask God to join us in these few moments. Let's pray. Lord, we invite you into this meeting tonight and ask you to be with us in the time we have together. We acknowledge the privilege of being in positions of influence, which comes from you and you alone. Whether a pastor, elected official, small business owner, or private citizen, we accept the responsibility you have given us to lead and care for Apex, our home. We invite you into this space and we ask that you guide us in our responsibilities, remembering those that you have asked us to look after. As you guide us, allow us to be unified with a single objective of fulfilling your will and purpose for our town and our community. We ask all of this and commit this time to you. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Garcia. If you would join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Again, thank you for joining us tonight. Just a few things before we get started. I would like to ask you to follow along on our agenda. If you don't have an agenda, you can go out to the doors right there on the podium, and you can grab an agenda out there. You can also follow on your smartphone, apexnc.org, and you can find the agenda under the Town Council page under the Agendas tab. Also, if you plan to speak during our public forum or public hearing, please make sure you come to the front and see our town clerk, Ms. Donna, and sign up on the appropriate sheet. And also, please follow speaking rules and procedures as printed. So, first on our agenda, we'll move into the presentations. And we'll start with our Fire Chief, Keith McGee.
Good evening, Mayor and Town Council. I'm very excited to come to you tonight to present to you our new Assistant Chief of Operations, who actually began work with us on December 2nd. It's just with scheduling. This was the first time we were able to get here. His name is Jeff Harrison. Jeff comes to us with a 20-year fire service career, recently with the city of Raleigh. He was a Raleigh battalion chief, but more importantly, he's been a 20-year resident of Apex. So he's coming home to protect his home turf. So we're happy to have him. We're excited to have him. And we just wanted to take a moment to introduce him to you so, hopefully that whenever you see him, you know that we've hired the best. We did a national search. We had, I think, 49 candidates with very high qualifications from across the country. And Jeff came out on top. So we're certainly glad to have him. We're glad that Apex is a community that continues to draw what I consider to be the best of the best. And again, we look forward to what the future lies, and we look forward to his leadership within our department. So just want to introduce them to you. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you. All right, we move now to our next presentation. I'm really excited about this. I've been following this group on Facebook for quite some time, and great group of young people doing great things in Apex. So what I would like to do now is call Coach Clint Rogers up, and if you would bring your team up, sir, we have a presentation for you. All right, so while they're coming up, I do want to say a few words about Coach Clint. So I was his SRO at Apex High School, and I will tell you, on the football field, he's mean as a snake. He got a lot of work done, and I'm so glad for what you're doing with our young people. We need mentorship like this in our community, and I know there's been a tremendous decline on football here in our community, and you stick with it and keep it going. So I want to thank you and your staff for what you do. So what I want to do right now is acknowledge you, and I got a letter to you, and I want to read that out. Okay? 2019 has been your year. You repeated as the CFF Conference Champions on October 26, 2019, and the Mid-South Regional Champions on November 30th, 2019, making you the best Pee Wee football team in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia. You're an extraordinary team in the sense that only one player returned from last year, and you still managed to be crowned back-to-back champions. This effort and team unity represented our community well, and we celebrate all who helped to achieve your wins. We recognize the team coach, Clint Rogers, a native of Apex, who volunteers a great deal of his time providing mentorship to many of our community youth through recreational football. Congratulations to you all. You have not only made yourselves proud, but the town of Apex as well. So I signed this letter, and I want to thank you, Coach, for what you do.
Take this opportunity to present Jacques a game ball. We really appreciate your support. I'm an Apex native, and it's really important to keep the community going. We love new people, but there's a lot of us who care about this place, and nobody any more than you do. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach.
This is our commissioner, Monica John.
So on behalf of our football team as well as our cheer team, Cheer Commissioner Diana Smith, we just wanted to give you a token of our appreciation for your continued support.
Thank you so much. Well, you got the whole town council behind you, so thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Which camera am I looking at?
I'm looking at Jody.
All right, we got it. All right, good deal.
Okay, good.
All right, Coach, I need for you to do one thing before you leave. Can I have him break it down for me?
Oh, gather round,
Oh, my head out.
everybody stick your hand in the middle. Since we are down at the town hall, I guess we gotta let the long arm of the law get them one time.
Cougars on me, Cougars on 3. 1, 2, 3.
All right. Well done. All right, we'll now move into our consent agenda. And I'll read this. All consent agenda items are considered routine to be enacted by one motion with the adoption of the consent agenda and without discussion. If a council member requests discussion of an item, the item may be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. And no one has presented any desire to remove anything to my knowledge. Has anything changed? Okay. I'm hearing none. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion approved?
Second.
All right, have a motion and second. Discussion? All right, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, passes unanimously. We're now moving to setting the meeting agenda. and you all have a printed agenda in front of you. And at this time, I would like to ask, is there anything that needs to be added to the agenda? All right, I'm hearing none. Can we have a motion to set the meeting agenda?
So moved.
All right, motion second, discussion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, meeting agenda is set. All right, now we move into our public forum. The public forum allows the public an opportunity to address the town council. The speaker is requested not to address an item that appears as a public hearing scheduled on the regular agenda. The council will listen but not act upon the forum comments at this meeting. And then a friendly reminder, 3-minute time limit for each speaker. And there are a series of lights in front of us here, green, yellow, and red. At red, you need to come and start coming in for a landing and end your presentation. So I have the list here from Ms. Donna, and we'll go ahead and start with the first person on the list. We have Diane Long. Please step forward.
Thank you for the opportunity to express this. I have been a resident of Apex for 56 years and speak for myself as a local citizen. I'm very interested in this newcomers idea. I met the lady at the chamber when I was taking some tickets for the home tour for the Historical Society, and she explained the purpose of the newcomers, and I think it's a great idea. So we have people that are moving here from all over the country, all over the world, and I believe that we really need to have regular programs so that we can kind of educate people that are coming here that do not know the history of the town, because living here in 56 years, it has changed a lot, and a lot of improvements have been made by the town. Also, I think Apex is a role model to other cities in this state as well as this country with the revitalization of the downtown. I think it's a real example of how downtown can be made very useful, and people seem to enjoy it so much. So anyway, I have some ideas about how we might go about this, and I would ask your advice on how to go forward with them. And that's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, next on the list is Nick Bryant, and I want to remind you also, please give your name and your address as well.
No problem. My name is Nick Bryant, 1023 New Dover Road. My concern has to do with the early start time of town council meetings in 2020. I'll make it as short as possible. Just that my opinion is 6 p.m. is too early. I like the 7 myself. I think 6:30 may be doable, but as a citizen who likes to attend and participate, it's difficult to receive kids from the bus, do homework, wait for our spouses to get home, eat, and still be here by 6 p.m. I think that's very difficult for myself, who live and work in Apex very close by. Those of us, or the others who don't live close by, I can imagine that's going to be much more difficult for them. So, my opinion, and there it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. All right, I know there was one other person that wanted to speak tonight, and perhaps they were not able to sign up on the sheet. Would you mind coming up and sign on the sheet? Yeah. Yes. Just come up here, right? Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You can stand right there. I want to make sure you were heard tonight. So. us your name and address.
Okay, my name is Yume Wakura. I live in 1504 Pink Cherokee Court. Good evening. I am a junior at Apex Friendship High School. I had been preparing to ask for support in installing park lights for the basketball courts at Apex Community Park. That is where I play tennis, and it is also where I recently realized that the basketball players there do not experience the same privileges as I do. One Sunday evening, I heard laughter coming from the direction of the basketball courts. They were playing basketball in the darkness while I had park lights above me. That is when Mayor Gilbert came to my school to speak. I took the opportunity to ask him if we could install lights for the courts because I felt it unfair that they did not have lighting. However, after calling Mayor Gilbert yesterday, it is my understanding that he has introduced the idea and that it is already in motion, even in other parks as well. So I thank Mayor Gilbert and the rest of the town council, as well as the town manager, for putting the idea in motion. I am certain that this investment will result in a positive impact. I actually went to Apex Community Park yesterday at around 7 p.m. to ask people if they would benefit from lights being installed in the courts. The person I asked said yes. He told me that he goes to the basketball courts every day after work. I'm sure people like him would really appreciate the lights. A suggestion I would like to make is to install solar paneled fixtures. I understand that the first thought that comes to mind when hearing solar panels is probably the overwhelming cost. This is because the initial installation cost is admittedly higher for solar panels than traditional park lights. However, traditional lights require connection to an electrical grid system where trenching and wiring would cost thousands of extra dollars on top of inevitable maintenance fees and electric bills. Since I believe the park will be open for years and years to come, the cheaper option in the long run, not to mention the environmentally friendlier option, would be solar-powered lights. I am willing to assist in the process of researching the most cost-efficient provider and input if necessary, so I hope you consider this alternative. Again, I am immensely grateful that my concern has been addressed, and I hope my suggestion can be incorporated in the process. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I enjoy when our youth come in and be a part of what we're doing here in the community, so thank you for coming out. All right, now we're moving to our public hearings. So we'll start with public hearing number 1. Amanda Morrell, landscape architect for Stantec, and also Shannon Cox, long-range planning manager, Town of Apex.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Morrell, and I am pleased to present for your consideration the draft Downtown Apex Master Plan and Parking Study. This plan represents the culmination of extensive public input, dedicated work of an engaged steering committee, and the talents of your town staff and my design team. I've had the privilege of managing this project for Stantec, and tonight I'd like to share with you the document and the public comments received to date. Chapter 1 provides an introduction and foundation for the plan document. It includes the plan's overall purpose, which is essentially a roadmap for you all to make downtown Apex a more livable, walkable, and thriving place over the next 20 years. The planned study area was essentially everything inside the Apex Peakway, with a focus on the core blocks around Salem Street, which we came to know as the heart of downtown Apex. The chapter also introduces you to the guiding principles of the document. It really captures everything we heard throughout the process. Put people first, celebrate Salem Street, and embrace authentic Apex. These guiding principles are used to measure every goal and project found within the document. Finally, Chapter 1 provides a brief overview of the rest of the document, highlighting key concepts from the upcoming chapters. It also introduces how to spot the 58 key recommendations found throughout. Chapter 2 briefly explains existing conditions and context information, part of our team's due diligence as part of the process, so I won't share that chapter specifically with you tonight. Chapter 3 aims to summarize the public outreach, engagement, and input received throughout the process. This has been a special project for us. I had the pleasure of working with your steering committee of 18 local citizens who showed up regularly to meetings, took on a parklet challenge, took us on a walking tour of your downtown, and will serve as your plan ambassadors moving forward. They're special people. We also had 2 days of focus group meetings where we met with over 65 individuals through 9 different meetings. We had a public open house with over 100 people in attendance. We had both digital and print surveys that were sent out to the community. We culminated the public outreach with a 4-day design charrette that was completely open to the public, and the community designed this vision along with us. The presentation of those draft recommendations in this very room to a packed house, and also thousands of views on Facebook Live. So I summarize all that to say thank you. Thank you to every individual that touched this process, because you only made it better. These are examples of some of the input that we received from the public, some concerning public dollars and how those should be spent, including pedestrian improvements and public space enhancements. We, of course, heard about parking, but we witnessed a real willingness to park once and walk if the journey was comfortable and the destinations were lively. We utilized that experimental parklet to find out that people were actually willing to give up some parking if it enhanced their outdoor dining experience and the overall character of your downtown. We learned about people's visual preferences, what they loved, what they wanted more and less of, and all of those things drove our design work and the ultimate recommendations. Chapter 4 is the first of 3 chapters that present technical analysis and recommendations from specific experts on our team. Chapter 4 specifically relays the retail market conditions and strategies. So the key takeaway from the retail assessment was that downtown Apex does not function today as one cohesive district, but rather 3 smaller districts. So it impacts your ability to be competitive. Fixing this issue should be a goal moving forward for your retail market. The overall goal is to complement what you have and tie those nodes together with a modest amount of new infill of 60 to 70,000 square feet of new retail development. Now, we need to be very targeted in the location of that new infill. In addition to those key recommendations, things like signage and wayfinding, which you will hear over and over again tonight, the appropriate tenant mix, curating that specifically, and increasing the resources for your newly hired downtown small business coordinator. The second area of technical analysis was a housing market study. It is presented in Chapter 5 of the document and presented by Lori Volk, our housing specialist. Lori helped us to understand who the households are that represent the potential market within the Apex study area, and how much of that market you are actually able to capture, reasonably speaking. She found, surprising to some, that younger singles and childless couples actually represent the largest proportion of demographic that are likely to move into your community over the next 10 years. She recommended that you plan on adding about 100 new units over the next 5 years annually. Now, this includes various housing typologies, right? So multifamily, single family, for rent, for sale units are all included. And more details about how that can be accomplished on the ground are found in chapters 7 and 8 of the document. The final area of technical analysis was parking. Chapter 6 focuses on the parking study and resulting findings. The parking analysis focused on that walkable distance around your core. And we gathered anecdotal evidence during the public open house that I mentioned earlier. And we paired that with the existing parking situation. You know, how much do you have? Where is it? Who owns it? And then, with the help of town staff, we collected and analyzed data to understand how that parking is being used, or the demand. As you can see in these graphics, the orange and red show lots that are actually at or above ideal occupancy during the busiest times of day. The green lots show areas that have surplus or can handle a little more parking during your peak times. So, everybody always asks, the bottom line is, does downtown Apex need a parking deck? The answer today is no. The data does not support the construction of a parking deck at this time, neither does public opinion by majority vote. We did look at the Templeton Street lot, which was a hot spot in that previous graphic I showed you as a potential location of a future deck. So, second question we always get asked is, should you plan for a deck in the future? And the answer to that, of course, is yes. It's your role as local government to plan for current and future needs. And so one of the plan's recommendations is a detailed parking deck analysis, so you can understand things that we didn't have during our process, things like geotechnical information and the like. During our analysis of the Templeton Street lot, we wanted to take a look at, if it wasn't a deck, what if it was a surface lot reconfiguration? Could we gain more spaces by utilizing the land differently? We also put price tags associated with each of the options, both parking deck options and the reconfigured surface lot. It showed us that with the parking deck, each space is going to cost you around $35,000. A reconfigured surface lot, $5,000 a space. So the plan clearly recommends that a surface lot reconfiguration is the direction to go at this time. But we also encourage you to pair that with on-street parking recommendations as a first step toward adding new parking in your downtown. Now, there are other recommendations in Chapter 6 that include what we call active parking management. Things like improved walkability, wayfinding and signage, pursuing formal shared parking agreements with some of your private property owners, and setting and enforcing time limits in some of those hotspot areas we saw previously. Chapter 7 provides an overview of the opportunity areas identified and explored at the parcel level detail during the design charrette. 4 key areas were identified through meeting with staff as well as the steering committee, and those were Vineyard Station, where the food line is, the downtown core area and surrounding blocks and neighborhoods, the Justice Heights neighborhood, and the Shangri-La Mobile Park. So during the charrette, we analyzed how the retail and housing recommendations could be implemented on the ground in these different areas. This is an image of the full conceptual master plan at the end of the day, and Chapter 8 goes into the detail related to each of these projects. But all the driving ideas behind each study area included mixed income housing, actively reusing buildings where possible, promoting new walkable development, providing hospitality options for your downtown, and certainly overall connectivity and shared parking. Chapter 8 relays the plan's key goals, but in a very graphic way, giving you tangible examples of how you can make sure these goals are met moving forward. These are your 9 key goals. Keep in mind, goal number 1 we've already discussed in Chapter 6, which is manage parking efficiently and effectively. The second key goal is to make Salem Street the best public space in the region. The public process reinforced the fact that Salem Street is the heart of your community. And today, it also reinforced that there are spatial and safety issues that this vision needed to address. The 30 parallel parking spaces on Salem Street present a great opportunity to accomplish a lot of the ideas that we heard necessary from the public moving forward. During the week of the charrette, together with the community, our team explored lots of different options for what that cross-section might look like. We looked at on-street parking on one side, wide sidewalk on the other side, alternating parallel parking and wide sidewalk in short and long sections, and we also looked at no parallel parking on Salem Street. This graphic depicts what the no parking option would give you. There would certainly be a few spaces in there for quick pickups and drop-offs, but it does give you wide sidewalk on both sides with street trees. And in this scenario, there's really no winners or losers when it comes to individual businesses, as with some of the other options. Now, you have to think that there's always a con, right? So the cons here are that those pull-off areas would still have to be the existing 7-foot width, which is a little tight, but people are managing today okay, and that there is no convenience parallel parking directly outside of the businesses. During the last public presentation in this room, we decided to take a pulse check or a public poll of where people were with the different options we had provided. And an overwhelming majority, as you can see, chose the option with no parking on Salem Street. While this poll will inform next steps, as you read in the document, we do recommend that a detailed streetscape plan that includes public input be part of your next steps moving forward. Goal number 3, to create vibrant spaces for people to gather. The public clearly conveyed a need for more gathering spaces in your downtown. The team took a look at places that need a little love, admittedly, but we saw them as amazing opportunities to increase vibrancy. Places like Commerce Street, where a relatively small investment could result in a vibrant people place. And Seaboard, where perhaps a public-private partnership yields a vibrant public space with lighting, plantings, and most importantly, people. The team also looked at buildings that have perfectly fine businesses in them today, but envisioned a future where they convert into people places, where public infrastructure investments meet private entrepreneurship and a vision for vibrancy. Or a fantastic business that you are frankly very lucky to have on your tax rolls decides to move completely to the back of their building and partner with a local entrepreneur to activate the Salem Street frontage with a cafe. Or an empty building and parking lot on your main street transforms into a mixed-use development that knits together your retail nodes with active ground floor uses, upper floors of housing. Again, all these things yield vibrancy. The 6 parking spaces at Saunders and Salem presented another opportunity to add square footage, active ground floor uses, upper story living, and increase vibrancy in your downtown. Goal number 4 is to expand housing options that promote equity. One of the areas we examined in detail was the Shangri-La Mobile Home Park at South Salem and the Peakway. It's a situation where you have one parcel and one owner, so thinking that change might occur in the future is not unreasonable. What you see is a proposed mixed-income neighborhood that not only promotes mixing incomes and people of awful trees. I know Brett loves to walk in this neighborhood because there's such great trees there. So not only are you getting essentially double the amount of units you can see, you're also getting common open spaces and connections to your larger greenway system. It's pretty important to note that of one housing type, which is the apartments in the new plan, it's actually more than the existing mobile units in the neighborhood. Now, we would like to recommend that you work specifically with an affordable housing group on this project so that people that live in this neighborhood today and want to stay have the ability to do so. The team also looked at opportunities in the Justice Heights neighborhood, a historically African-American neighborhood of homes and churches on the south side of William Street. We wanted to make sure that it was connected to and benefited from all the investments happening downtown. We explored what we call sensitive neighborhood infill and the addition of neighborhood commercial in this area. The point is not to displace current residents. It's not even to remove or rebuild homes. The point is to look at some of the interior of the blocks and see if it makes sense to add some infill. Now, the other key is that we're adding commercial in this area so that there are employment opportunities that are within walking distance of the community. Moving further up, above 55 on South Salem, we looked at exploring knitting back together what we call the grand residential street that leads to the heart of downtown. In this area, we actually added around 60 new housing units. We then examined some of the blocks closer to your core, ones that fall in your historic overlay district. At first, just looking at the simple addition of accessory dwelling units and alleys, this added a modest 22 units in this area. And then, moving forward, looking at things we call non-contributing structures in your historic overlay, we were able to add in infill housing that's a similar character to the existing homes in the block. This block alone gave us 100 new housing units within a 5-minute walk of your downtown. We also took a look at the area around the food line at Laura Duncan and the Peakway. Now, this is a typical suburban big box grocery development with a sea of asphalt, but there are so many things happening in this area, so many new neighborhoods and activities. So we wanted to start thinking about this area as a true neighborhood center, where mixed-use development that fronts the street and hides parking behind adds to the infrastructure that ties into existing neighborhoods and adds mixed-use opportunities for neighborhood-level commercial in the area, and eventually becomes a walkable and bikeable center with additional housing typologies such as townhomes, upper story lofts, and all this, keep in mind, is within a 10-minute walk of your downtown. Key goal number 5 is to create connections to downtown, much of which will be achieved through your Advanced Apex Transportation Study that was adopted back in February. We felt, though, it was part of our due diligence and important to identify those streets that really impact the 5- and 10-minute walk specifically. One example you'll find in the document is North Salem Street. On-street parking, a reduction in speed, and wider sidewalks would go a long way to improving pedestrian and cycling safety in this area and provide a nicer entry into your downtown. Now, Apex knows how to do large-scale events, no doubt. You've got that down. But it's the more frequent events that are smaller that incite vibrancy. So we want to encourage a diversity of activities and programming moving forward. These 20 spaces in front of your beautiful historic depot and caboose present a major opportunity to create a flexible public space, the place in downtown Apex. Depot Plaza is simply designed as curbless as possible with shade trees and permeable pavers, movable chairs, tables, umbrellas, a splash pad, even a cascading wall of water on the accessible ramp leading up to the porch area. A space that can host your farmers market, but more importantly, be available all day, every day as a gathering space for this community. Now, we all know that this great programming is lost if people don't know how to get there or don't feel welcome once they arrive. So we encourage you to roll out the welcome mat with your small town charm. Treat your gateways as the front porches of your community, not what they are today. As you can see in the upper right-hand corner, this is the existing conditions at 55 in Salem. We want you to encourage new business and development in this area that say, come on in, stay a while. In this one intersection, you have the potential for an active reuse of a historic structure, a boutique hotel, a multimodal transit station, and mixed-use neighborhood commercial. Now, of course, branding, wayfinding, signage, all of these things play into the success of this goal. And part of people feeling welcome in a community goes back to how you detail and design your public spaces. Things go on in public spaces that make you feel welcome in a community, like giant Jenga and cornhole, perhaps. Maybe it's a place you buy local produce and other products that can only be found in Apex. Or it's the space where you light your Christmas tree every year as a community. You have your kids sitting on Santa's lap next door on the 1939 fire engine, and perhaps your child laces up ice skates for the very first time. Key goal number 8 is to honor the history of downtown. A tremendous opportunity to fulfill that goal lies in the Tunstall House and grounds. We want to encourage you to tell the story of the peak of the peak. Create a place for your community, a revenue-generating venue for residents and visitors alike. A place with community gardens and pergola-covered swings along a strollway that's enhanced with landscaping, signage, and lighting. And turn a long-standing civic feature of Salem Street that signifies safety and protection for your community. From a building that stands out today to some as a missed opportunity. Turn that into a public-private partnership that yields an iconic civic presence on Salem, while also providing more active ground floor businesses and making sure those wide sidewalks are maintained, but that you plant street trees. And perhaps, maybe one day, you put that 1939 engine behind glass and light it up at night. And finally, goal number 9 is to reimagine spaces through art, innovation, and creativity. Now, this goal is all about having fun and thinking outside the box. There are perfectly fine places in your downtown that, when thought of a little bit differently, could be vibrant and exciting, like Julia's Grove Preschool, for example. This is actually the installed mural, as many of you know, so if anybody's keeping score, 1 for the plant ambassadors. You can take leftover spaces and create a sense of place, telling a story about the fact that the log pond was in this general location many years ago through artwork. Or the parking spaces near the art gallery, become an outdoor dining opportunity. You look at buildings that are intended to evoke community, art, and culture, and you make sure when people pass by they know it, and they have to go in and take a look. So, how do you make all this happen? Chapter 9 gives you the tools to do just that. You've been given key policy recommendations, key financing recommendations, key programming recommendations to boost vibrancy. All of these key recommendations are consolidated in what we call an implementation matrix in Chapter 9. This matrix includes information about the level of public funding and the time frame anticipated for each project. We also provided you with a top 10 project list. These are projects that, in all cases, meet the guiding principles and in as many cases as possible meet the key goals for the plan. These are the 10 things we think that you need to do to make this vision become a reality. Chapter 9 also dedicates a page to each of these projects and identifies specific steps for the town and partners as you move through implementation. As an example, the Tunstall House and Grounds and Strollway, you're given a general path forward and then 6 key steps for making it happen that you can check off as you go. Now, the steering committee, also known as your plan ambassadors, asked us specifically for a way that they could stay involved and check progress and help make things happen, honestly. So we identified 4 key steps to do just that. Those are that the town will use this document as a roadmap for leadership and delegation of tasks. Number 2, that the plan ambassadors, the former steering committee members, will meet with town staff for a downtown download at least twice a year. The 3rd is that an annual meeting will occur between town staff, town council, and mayor, and the Apex Downtown Business Association to review the implementation matrix we just saw and the top 10 project milestones. And then finally, in the year 2040, the list we've given you of how you'll know you succeeded will all be true. Those things are that Salem Street will be full of people day and night, that retail and restaurant rents will outperform office, that we've added 100 more housing units to the downtown area, we've created a real parking problem, people of all ages, ethnicities, and backgrounds will be downtown, entrepreneurs will have opened 10 new businesses, friends and families will be playing and making memories in your downtown, residents and visitors will know the story of downtown Apex, people will reach downtown Apex by walking, biking, bus, car, and partnerships and old-fashioned hard work will have made it happen. The document draft has been available to the public since November 11th. On the screen, you will see the public comments received to date. I'll briefly summarize those and how they've been addressed. Number 1, incorporate stormwater mitigation into the plan for Salem Streetscape. We went back in and added a new bullet to section 8.2. You'll note that that does just that, including permeable pavers, bioswales, and the like. The second comment was a concern over adding housing to downtown. There was no change to the document, but it was conveyed that additional housing in downtown would happen incrementally over time, not one large project, and that adding housing in a downtown setting actually reduces congestion because it allows people the ability to walk and bike from their homes to their daily services. The third, the need for pedestrian and roadway improvements. There was no change to the document as most of the multimodal transportation projects will be taken care of in the Advanced Apex document you have already adopted. Next, adding charging stations to the parking lot. We felt the need to add a bullet related to that, so in section 6.7 you'll see that. The need for additional and more schools. This was outside the scope of our services, so no change was made to the document. However, it was conveyed that the town works with the local school system on those things. Next was to close Salem Street entirely to vehicular traffic. While some communities have found some success with that at this time, it is not something we feel comfortable putting into the document. We feel like the alternate routes would be have more pressure put on them, and those are neighborhood streets, so we wanted to prevent that as much as possible. And then finally, including an opportunity to screen outdoor movies. This was already in the document, so there was no change. It's part of the test ideas you'll find on page 152 for the Depot Plaza. The Planning Board unanimously recommended the approval at their December 9th meeting of the Downtown Apex Master Plan and Parking Study. Planning staff and the consultant team respectfully request Council's adoption of the Downtown Apex Master Plan and Parking Study. Our process and plan is intended to push you and make you think outside the box. But we personally can't wait to watch the creative forces of this community make this plan come to life. I want to thank you for the opportunity to work in your community. It has been my pleasure. I will open the floor now to any questions that myself or Shannon Cox might answer.
Any questions for Ms. Morrell?
I had a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Were the residents of Shangri-La Mobile Home Park consulted in the process?
Shannon?
I can speak to that. We have not reached out to specific developments or area with targeted outreach as part of this process. However, a utility bill mailer was sent to every resident. We've used Facebook. We've posted things downtown, in the library, places where people would visit, put the legal notice out, done pretty much everything that we can. If that project were to move forward, it would be a public-private partnership. This is really just giving us the vision so that when a developer might come to us, we can work with them in a way that provides affordable housing and walkability.
So no real responses from that neighborhood?
We have not had specific responses or comments about that particular recommendation in the plan. I cannot say that we haven't had feedback from people in that neighborhood.
Any other questions for Ms. Morrell? Ms. Cox?
Was there any conversation about how the schools would be impacted with increased housing?
The only comment that we received regarding any concerns about schools was the comment summarized, which I took off of the Facebook comments. That was really the only time that it came up during the public engagement process.
And we did meet with the schools as part of our stakeholder meetings and discuss safe routes to school as part of that meeting. So,
And what was the feedback that you got from that?
related specifically to the need for new schools?
Or any impact on development? Did you get specific
I
feedback?
wouldn't say specifically they said anything.
The school officials and the school administration have been very supportive of safe routes to school and promoting, walkability, bikeability. We've worked with them on a number of fronts for that. There was not specific concern about any recommendations related to housing as part of this process.
It's a lot of acreage for a school. I mean, the land is very valuable, so I assume the school system would probably go somewhere else to get a cheaper parcel than that, anywhere in there.
Right. I was just thinking about increased people, with families and children, where they go to school and how that impacts school capacity.
I think what you raise is a good point, that once we approve the plan, whatever the plan is, that we approve the final one, that when we engage with our elected officials at other levels, that it's part of the conversation.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. I just want to ask about the applicability of the small town character overlay district. I know it's something we've adopted. I think it's fantastic. I bring up the question because of the addition of the new housing being proposed in the downtown district. Have we evaluated recently the overlay district we have? And with the additional accessory units and the other housing we're proposed, I guess my question is the small town character overlay district sufficient in a downtown which contains all this new housing, or should we look at evaluating it again and perhaps updating it or adding additional requirements? Or I see here there's a set where it lists like 15 things you have to do, and it says pick 3 of them. Is that still the right approach in this environment with this plan?
Due to state law, we cannot require anything
in the small town character area or elsewhere in terms of architectural standards. Those are all recommendations, which we can certainly update the recommendations, but they are not requirements because we are not allowed to make them requirements for 1 and 2 family homes.
I see. Sorry for using the wrong term. I guess my question is, should we reevaluate the small town character overlay district in light of this plan? Has that been done? Should we do it?
Talking about the scope of it?
I'm talking about the specific requirements in the overlay district.
Requirements within.
Specific recommendations in the overlay district. Given that the character of the buildings that are being proposed in this plan are different than what we've had historically. I'm a little new here. This historical district, that's relatively new, right? We had it a couple of years ago. Have we looked at it in the past couple of years and updated it, I guess? I guess more of a request. Should we look at it?
So we can look at things like lot widths and setbacks, if that's something that you all would desire for us to do. In terms of the historic districts, they are National Register historic districts, and there are no requirements associated with those. The small town character overlay district is mostly helpful for multifamily and for non-residential in terms of requirements. 1 and 2 family homes, again, can't, and so that goes for accessory units too. We can't have architectural standards, but we could have lot width and or setback differences than what we have currently. We can look at that, but our standards are pretty strict. It's very difficult for folks to add additional units currently, so I don't know where this council is. If you want us to lessen the restrictions, that certainly could be done, and in terms of affordable housing, that's something that I think we will be looking at through the affordable housing plan.
There were some zoning, you guys reviewed the zoning in some areas, and was the zoning in the, where the homes are being talked about, was that zoning also reviewed, or was it more the commercial zoning, like and things we had in that were reviewed?
I would say all of those things were looked at. I pulled up the key policy recommendations related specifically, and the only thing that I see that relates to sort of what Diane was alluding to was setbacks within the small town character overlay district was something that we recommended you take a look at. But again, a lot of it's more related to commercial, and you already have active ground floor requirements in that overlay, which is a wonderful thing that many communities don't have. There were some business typologies, such as the boutique hotel was in an area that might not permit that today, but that could be looked at.
Was the housing part that kind of near downtown, the plans you were showing, could they do that with current zoning right now, or would it require some changes?
So duplexes are not currently allowed in the small town character area, and so that is something that has been on our list for consideration of adding that back in as an allowed use. It's related to density, but it's more related to affordable housing, and so we will be embarking on that plan. So I think, it could be done prior to the plan, or it could be done as part of the affordable housing plan.
There's also a recommendation to eliminate the watershed and flood damage standards. Can you explain that a little bit more?
I'm trying to think what that one was specifically doing. It was probably not requiring within that heart, that core, that somebody that's coming in and doing infill development would be required to do a large stormwater pond in your downtown. That it's looked at as more of a district whole watershed, and so that stormwater is handled in that way and not specifically project by project or parcel by parcel.
And so I just want to add that for any of these policy recommendations, if we were to move forward, that would be a specific conversation about each of those, a public hearing about that specific recommendation and a potential change to the UDO. So we would go through these one by one, talk with our Water Resources Department, make sure that we carefully evaluate each one of these before suggesting that we would move forward.
And just an additional comment, I know we will be looking at housing affordability as a town this coming up year, and that's a very important issue in Apex and throughout Wake County.
Can you speak to a little bit about how the additional housing might meet diverse needs of people with diverse incomes? What do you envision?
I think anywhere that we drew housing in the plan, our vision was that it would be a mixed income. That's why we encourage the use of various typologies within different developments, that it's not one specific type. It's not a development with only townhomes or a development with only large lot, single-family homes. So I think providing that diversity adds to the affordability, but as Diane mentioned, you're limited by law as far as what you can require. Now, if the town owns the property, you can work into the development agreement certain percentages required for affordable housing as part of that agreement with the developer, but that's on a project-by-project basis. It's not a blanket thing that the town can just say. So, but yes, the vision would, of course, be that people of all incomes are living in the same neighborhoods. So.
The steering committee was very aware of that and was pushing that as well, I would say, as well. I recall many conversations along those lines.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Ms. Cox, do you have any additional information to pass?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right.
Actually, I do. I'm sorry, I have one. So with this, is this plan, do you see it as, how independent is it from all the other developments going on in Apex? I mean, if, let's say we develop certain areas as maybe mixed use or commercial outside this core, I mean, this was evaluating it based on current conditions and how it could be improved. I mean, do you see nearby commercials being opposing it or in competition, or is it more its own independent thing?
I think it's a completely different animal. Your downtown is so unique and authentic, and that's why people are drawn to it. New mixed-use development that happens in other sort of suburban locations outside the urban center of your town is a different animal. It's shopped at by different demographics. It attracts different types of businesses, and what you have in downtown is special, and it can compete, but its competition are other downtowns in nearby locations. It's not, Beaver Creek. It's not. It's a completely different commercial environment. So
when you speak to commercial and we think about business economic development in Apex, is most of the business development that you envision would be more retail, entertainment type of business opportunities?
I would say retail and restaurants in your downtown are things that create a destination, and you already have a great number of restaurants, which is really rare. So hold on to that and encourage more of that. And what a lot of people don't understand is that the sort of niche retail and restaurant businesses don't necessarily take business away from one another when they're co-located in a downtown, especially one that is of your scale. This sort of 2-block is that magical kind of distance that people are willing to walk. So I think it's a focus should be that niche retail, and that's part of the role of Colleen, your brand new downtown business coordinator, for her to curate what is that right mix in downtown Apex, what can complement what you already have, and what can be new things that you don't have today that can make it even more of a destination. I think we talk about it as a theme festival district is what it is in retail terminology speak. So a place that people are willing to drive to, park, and walk around for a couple of hours is what you're looking for.
I have a question real quick.
Yes, sir.
With your steering committee and people that were brought to the table, how many youth were brought in, say in high school age, to kind of present their thoughts and innovation?
We actually reached out to the youth of Apex in a couple of different ways. During the week of the design charrette, we had a focus group meeting specifically for youth to participate in. Some of the images you saw were, if I were the mayor of Apex, this is what I would do. So those are some great images to take a look at. We also went over to the skate park and did some postcard surveys. We went to open gym hours at the community center with those postcard surveys, and all of that information was built into the recommendations. So,
thank you.
Yeah, you have some bright folks here.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Just a final comment. This is wonderful. Thank you you all for the work.
Yeah, great job. Well
You're
done.
so welcome. It's been my pleasure.
All right, at this time, I would like to open up public hearing. And on the list, I have Shane Reese. You will come up.
Hi, everybody. I'll be brief. Shane Reese, 1708 Yately Lane, Apex. I speak on behalf of the Apex Downtown Business Association. We fully support this plan. As we all know in this town, it is not a matter of if we grow, but how we grow. And we see this as an opportunity, especially in our small business group, an opportunity to build density in downtown. It dovetails well with the Advanced Apex Plan, which allows us to preserve some of our rural character in the western part of town. This is a great opportunity, not only for our businesses, but for us to have a place for us to make family memories, as Amanda said in her presentation, but also for us to protect some of the small businesses that we have downtown. I happen to be a one-man show. I'm everything from the CEO to a janitor, and I've got an office about the size of this desk. And I rightfully rent upstairs and not on the street floor where retail and restaurants should be. But I do want to make the point that part of the reason we support this plan is because many of your businesses up and down Salem Street do not own their buildings. They're small, family-run businesses with low profit margins. They're very much like you and me. So there's an assumption that can be made, and rightfully so. Before I was downtown, I think I made the same assumption, that, oh, these people must be doing great. You know, the Rusty Bucket's been there since 2008. Everything's fantastic. That's true. We also all like to think, or like the thought of those businesses being there, and don't necessarily spend our dollars at those places. This is an opportunity, again, for us to build our downtown in a way that is equitable for all of us. And quickly, if you don't mind, council member, I just want to address that we did have many focus groups. The town staff and consultants were fantastic about bringing in many different groups, having in different venues. So it was not all just right here on town campus. I believe they had a millennial group that I'm now aged out of at the provincial upstairs, and so they had those, you know, many of those people. And then similar, Mayor, to what you said, I know that youth were brought into this. So we're very excited about this plan, but the one thing I wanted to address is some of us did have an opportunity. Unfortunately, we were unable to make it over to Shangri-La, but walked every house of Justice Heights with a flyer. I don't know that it was endorsed by the town, but we did walk with a flyer that announced that this plan was occurring. And it was very important for us to bring every voice to the table. We're very proud of this plan. We thank you so much for your support thus far, and we hope that you'll adopt the plan tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reese. All right, that's the only name on our list for a public hearing. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and refer the matter to council for discussion and possible motion to adopt.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
I'd like to second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
I just want to say also, while we're in the discussion phase, that I think that the steering committee, I was a member of that, and it was probably the most fun I've had in the government thing ever. So there's that. Maybe that's lame, I'm not sure, but they did a great job, and I think they should be commended as well, because it was definitely a great partnership between the Stan Tech and then the steering committee and the staff. Everybody, I think, got along really well. I think the product was that much better because of all the work that the steering committee and everybody did together.
Other discussion?
I love how much detail goes into this plan, and I think it's given us a good guidebook if we want to move forward with this. And obviously, there was a lot of input from so many different people, so I think it's great.
I think when more than if, right?
All right, any other discussion before I call the vote?
Great.
All right, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Good job. All right, we'll now move to public hearing 2. Lawrence Stoudemire, Planner 1, the Town of Apex.
Good evening, everyone. This is rezoning case 19CZ20, located at 2708 Blazing Trail Drive. This property is located in this general southwest area. The property to be rezoned is 2 acres and is located on the east side of Blazing Trail Drive, north of Hume Olive Road in Friendships Station High School, or Apex Friendship High School, and near Parkside Bella Casa. The property currently contains 2 residential structures. The property is currently zoned rural residential, and the adjacent zonings are to the north and south, plan unit development conditional zoning, to the east and west, rural residential. The applicant is proposing to rezone this property to medium density conditional zoning. The 2045 land use map identifies the proposed site as medium density residential. The proposed rezoning is consistent with the land use map designation. The applicant conducted a neighborhood meeting on September 30th, 2019, and a copy of the neighborhood report is in your packet. Before reviewing the proposed uses and conditions, I would like to point out there is one additional condition that is added, and a copy is at your seat. The proposed uses include single-family, utility minor, and accessory apartment. The applicant has provided architectural conditions that we typically see for single-family residential, and a full list starts on page 2 of your staff report. There are 6 proposed conditions that I would like to point out that we typically don't see. And the first one is a minimum of 1 residential dwelling in this development shall be constructed to include the installation of solar panels and a power system of at least 4 kilowatt capacity. The lots of which these homes are located shall be identified on the master subdivision plat, which may be amended from time to time. All other single-family detached homes shall be pre-configured with conduit for a solar energy system. The second condition is homeowner association covenant shall not restrict the construction of an accessory dwelling unit. The third one is all single-family homes shall be built to meet or exceed the minimum standards for Energy Star certification. Fourth, a pedestrian connection consisting of a 5-foot wide sidewalk within a 10-foot wide public access easement on homeowners association common area shall be provided from the stub of Lake Waccamaw Trail, which we think based off it will be about right here.
Say again, or show that again.
The stub will probably be in this
Okay.
area. To the existing sidewalk within the towns at Bella Casa Association to the south. If an easement is not granted for this sidewalk connection by the towns at Bella Casa Association, then the pedestrian connection consisting of a 5-foot wide sidewalk within a 10-foot wide public access easement on homeowner association common area shall be provided from the stub of Lake Waccamaw to Blazing Trail Drive. The side yard setback for single-family lots shall be reduced from 6-foot minimum with a 16-foot aggregate to a 5-foot minimum with a 12-foot aggregate to accommodate the pedestrian connection from Lake Waccamaw Trail to Blazing Trail. Existing trees greater than 18-inch in diameter that are removed by site development shall be replaced by planting a 1.5-inch caliber native tree from the Town of Apex Design and Development Manual, either on-site or in an alternative location approved by town planning staff. The proposed rezoning is reasonable and in the public interest because it is consistent with the medium density residential land use classification on the 2045 land use map. The density will be keeping with the surrounding approved development and provide a transition between the single-family dwellings to the north and the townhomes to the south, and it will continue the single-family development pattern from the north while providing a public pedestrian connection to Blazing Trail Drive from the adjacent properties to the north. Planning Board heard this item at their December 9th, 2019 meeting and unanimously recommended approval. Planning staff can recommend approval with conditions as offered by the applicant. I'll be happy to answer questions as well as the applicant in the audience.
Is it your understanding that this side yard setback in condition 17, they may revert back to the 6-foot and 16-foot aggregate if the trail does end up going to that existing sidewalk? Is it a if-then kind of thing?
It will, to my understanding, it will stay the same with the setback.
Okay.
But it just depends on if the sidewalk.
Yeah. So it says minimum, it doesn't mean they will build it the 5 foot if they do the other trail, I guess. Is the 5 to 6 foot allowing for an extra house if the sidewalk goes around the?
No, it just depends on where the sidewalk is located, and that is typically at site plan review, master subdivision plan. So once we determine where that is, it still might affect the lot size, depending on where the stub is and where the sidewalk goes.
Okay.
So we just want to give that flexibility and that option.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Concerning this connection between the sidewalk
Mhm.
and the towns of Bella Casa, have we contacted the HOA president or the HOA board of the towns of Bella Casa and asked them if they're interested in this connection?
That is a question for the applicant. I know Peter has been passed that information, and he can speak to that.
Any other questions?
And it looks like it's 6 lots, that's the plan? Or-
It depends on, what lot size they use and the configuration of it. Peter can probably explain more to that, because depending on his preliminary drawings or if he has come up with it, but. Mhm.
With the medium density qualification, then we have a max, though. Max of how many lots? Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, any other questions for Ms. Stoudemire? All right, thank you. All right, at this time, I'll open up public hearing, and I have no sign-ups, so.
The applicant probably would like to make a
Oh,
statement.
I'm sorry. Come on up, Mr. Applicant. Appreciate that.
Peter Canasson, Jones Canasson Engineering, 221 North Salem Street. We're the consulting engineer for the prospective buyer. Appreciate Lauren's presentation, very thorough. We want to thank all the staff really for their help and assistance in formulating and going through these various conditions that have been added to the rezoning. Just a couple specific things regarding the conditions, the environmental, or excuse me, the architectural elements that have been added to the rezoning. Those are consistent with the adjacent neighborhoods of Bella Casa as well as the towns. And also the added elements in the rezoning and conditions related to solar, Energy Star certification in the building of the houses, as well as doing replacement trees. We believe those are added green components, which we are in agreement with, and we understand those to be important to the town, and the prospective buyer is in agreement with those and wanted to make forth that good effort because we know that's important to you. Just to let you know a little bit about the Greenway Trail. I have reached out to the HOA member who is the president, and they are going to bring that request to their meeting, which just happened in the second week in January. I can let you know that based on what her request is that she didn't look very favorable to provide an easement to allow that connection, but she said she would bring it to their representatives and homeowners and see if that's something that they'll agree with. So that'll be forthcoming and something that we will handle at the time of master plan approval if this rezoning is approved. As far as the intent for the development, we are planning to single family. It's more of an infill type of site to complete the streetscape along Blazing Trail Drive with 3 lots. The minimum lot width required per the zoning is 50 feet. So there will be no more than three houses that will fit along that street frontage. As far as the access off of Lake Oakama, we plan to end that in a cul-de-sac. The prospective buyer is a resident within the Bella Casa community. It's his intent possibly to relocate his home to maybe one parcel, the entire back half of the property, or it may be subdivided into 3 lots with him keeping one. That's still to be determined. But this is hopefully a good project that we're bringing to the town. We appreciate hopefully your support, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, any questions?
The HOA, who owns that land, so does it just include the homes basically to the west of the site and not to the north?
That is correct. It basically follows almost that rear lot line here.
Yeah.
And comes up to Blazing Trail.
And everything kind of south of, okay.
Yeah, everything to the east of the property line is large lots off, or what is it, Whispering Quail?
Quail.
Whispering Quail.
Yeah, okay.
I just want to thank you for all the conditions that you've offered here. Clearly, you've done your homework on what the town council's been looking for the past couple of years. And to be honest with you, I went through this pretty deeply. It's my first one, and I tried to find something to complain about, and I couldn't find anything. And I went out and I talked to some of the neighbors, and the neighbors seem to be generally supportive of this project as well. So thank you for the work you put in this.
We appreciate that, and I'll certainly make that known to the buyer. That's appreciated.
All right, any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, I will open up public hearing. Sign-up sheet, I don't see any sign-ups here, so I'll go ahead and close public hearing and refer the matter to council for discussion. Lead to a motion.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion second, discussion.
It's my hope that HOA, if they're listening, that they should be concerned with their neighbors here and not be selfish and say, we don't want them walking through the backyard, because it will increase neighborhood connectivity if that sidewalk goes behind those houses. And I hope they have a change of heart. And I'm not surprised, but I hope they have a change of heart on that one.
Any other discussion? All right, I'll call the vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 All opposed, no. All right, that passes unanimously. We'll move on to public hearing 3. Liz Lofton, public hearing and possible motion to remove the historic landmark status for the property located at 4525 Green Level West Road. In compliance with North Carolina General Statute 160A 400.4.
Good evening. This property is located on the south side of Green Level West Road. And unfortunately, on Wednesday, May 22nd, 2019, the Apex historic landmark known as James Madison Williams House was tragically lost due to a fire. It was a complete loss, and nothing was able to be salvaged from the farmhouse structure. Since the farmhouse was the center of the landmark designation, the site has lost its historical significance. And the applicant is requesting that the landmark status be removed so that the family is able to build a new single-family home. Planning staff does recommend approval, and Gary Roth with Capital Area Preservation is also here to give you some information.
Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. I'm Gary Roth, Capital Area Preservation, representing the Wake County Historic Preservation Commission. As Liz said, this is a sad duty for you guys. This is the first time that we've had this happen in Wake County, and it's certainly an unfortunate incident that is caused by no one. But the house was originally designated on the 15th of December in 2017. That's 2 years and 2 days ago. And today we're coming to you to ask for a removal of the landmark designation. I'm going to try to get to this. There we go. Okay. The house is located at 4525 Green Level West Road in Apex ETJ. The owner is Eliza C. Williams. It was originally constructed by her family member, James Madison Williams, in about 1909. And it shows both Queen Anne and colonial revival elements. The historic use of the property was as a tobacco farm. And I'm going to, am I doing it? Not sure if it's, I went dead. Am I this one? Use this one. Okay, all right, perfect.
This is the location. I think many of you are probably familiar with it. It's right on the Chatham County line. And so as you come into Wake County and to Apex on Green Level West, it's the first building that you saw behind the stone wall. So it really, even before it was an official landmark, it was a kind of an emotional landmark in many senses. Very familiar. I'm just going to take you through a few historic pictures and pictures of the house just to give you an idea of what it is that we've lost. This is a family picture from this is an extended family picture. These folks didn't all live in the house. But it is interesting, there is another Wake County landmark, Apex landmark, the Upchurch Williams house, and some of those folks are in here. So it's a big family, and there's lots of Williams properties around the county and around Apex. But that's about 1930s. This is a picture of it relatively recently. If you haven't seen it before, this is another. It was just an amazing house. It has a lot of similarities to the Upchurch Williams house, and I'll point out later that it may very well have been built by the same builder, but nothing had the turret that this one had. This was really special. And you can kind of see the curve of the turret in this photograph of the interior. So just a few shots of the interior. It was a home, it wasn't a museum, but this ceiling, a beadboard ceiling, is interesting because this was the ceiling of the turret, at the top of the turret, and there is a similar ceiling in the Upchurch Williams house, which you'll talk more about next month. But so it does show a relationship, and it could have been the same building group that did it, builder. And sadly, this is the end. This is May 22nd, earlier this year. The property was a total loss. Fire departments from Apex, Cary, Chatham County all responded, obviously did their best, but this is how it ended. So this is a sad one. The Wake County Historic Preservation Commission staff recommends that the Apex Town Council remove the designation of the James Madison Williams House located at 4525 Green Level West Road, Apex, as an Apex Historic Landmark and adopt the associated ordinance. And here with me tonight is someone I think you know, who is the Vice Chair of the Wake County Historic Preservation Commission, and he will come up and give their recommendation on this.
Mayor, Council. At its meeting on November 19th, 2019, the Wake County Historic Preservation Commission unanimously recommended that the Apex Town Council remove the historic landmark designation of the James Madison Williams House located at 4525 Green Level West Road, Apex, and adopt the associated ordinance.
If you would, for the record, just give your name.
Oh, Jeff Hastings, 3609 Friendship Road, Apex.
Thank you, Mr. Hastings.
And that ends the presentation.
Thank you. All right.
Are there any lessons learned for these older structures, the historic structures, to have increased fire protection included? Is it allowed, first of all, for them to have it?
It would be allowed. It would be allowed. I will say one lesson I've learned out of this is what Ms. Williams' granddaddy told her, and that is the first time you smell smoke, get out of the house. Don't pick up anything. Don't take anything with you. Go. And if she hadn't have gone, she would have been in serious trouble. So no, it's perfectly fine to do to have she had a smoke detector. She had a burglar alarm, and they did help to alert her. But putting in sprinklers and so forth is a step that's not generally taken in a private home. So, okay. I mean, it could be. They'd have to work with us in how they did that, but it's not something that you commonly see.
What about like insulation? That might be more fire suppressing.
Well, I don't think the insulation was a problem. I think it was the wood and what the wood was coated with. Okay. I don't really think it was that. There probably wasn't much insulation, in fact.
Okay.
So.
Any other questions? All right. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. I have no sign-up, so I'll close public hearing and refer the matter to council for discussion. Possible motion.
Motion to approve removal of the historic landmark status for this property.
Second.
All right, motion is second. Discussion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, that passes unanimously. We'll now move into public hearing 4. Liz Lofton, 2708 Olive Chapel Road, public hearing and possible motion to designate the property located there.
So the landmark status is located on the north side of Olive Chapel Road, adjacent to the Smith Farm subdivision. In 2019, the applicant purchased the Tom Olive House from Lennar and has done a full restoration using the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. Capital Area Preservation holds a historic preservation easement on the house, which protects the historic character in perpetuity. The applicant is requesting that the Tom Olive House be declared an Apex landmark, which means the community recognizes the house as an important historic resource worthy of preservation. Any substantial exterior changes to the landmark are subject to design review by Wake County Historic Commission. Planning staff does recommend approval of the landmark status for the Tom Olive House. And Gary will also give a presentation on the Tom Olive House.
So from the funeral, we move to the birthday party, I hope. Something a little bit more, it's a little happier. This is a request to designate the Tom Olive House as a Apex Historic Landmark. It's commonly known as the Tom Olive House. It's the Alsey Thomas Olive House, and that's how it will actually be designated and plaqued and so forth. But it is on Olive Chapel Road, and the owner is Michael Ingram, and he is present this evening and may wish to speak as well. This is, I think we've, well, let's go back to that. Okay, that just gives you a better idea of where it's located. The Olives were very, very community-minded, and we'll talk about that in a bit. The house faces south and is positioned roughly in the center of an irregularly shaped 0.66 acre lot on the north side of the road. In 2018, the parcel was subdivided from the Smith Farm residential subdivision, which is currently being developed on land surrounding the parcel. And this is another, this kind of gives you an idea of just how many olive houses there are in Wake County. There's quite a number. There's 13 of them in all, and that are one way or another affiliated with the Olive family. The Olive family of this house in particular, the Olive family in general, but the Olive family of this house in particular, was very, very community-minded. The gentleman who Cater Olive was the first, and he bought 264 acres on both sides of Big Beaver Creek, and he married initially Louisa Hunter Olive. They lived in a log cabin, and then they eventually built this home that we're designating tonight. They were very, very involved in the community. They were involved in educational programs in the neighborhood. They were involved with the Olive Baptist Church, which is still an active part of the Olive community. They established a school near the church, and they also established a cemetery, which is still across the street from the church. So some of their contributions continue. Alsey Thomas and Ina Olive were married in 1884. The young couple lived with the elder Olives in the log house. Tom embarked on a short-lived career in the lumber and turpentine industry, which took him away from Wake County until 1894. That year, Cater and Louisa sold 2 tracts of land on the waters of Big Beaver Creek in White Oak Township to Tom and Ina for $1,000. The first parcel was identified as the home tract, which corresponds with the 264 acres purchased by Cater in 1846. In the late 19th century, the Olive Farm produced a variety of crops. It was also, they had Angus beef cattle, colts, sheep, chickens. Around 1905, Tom and Ina completed the construction of a new house on the north side of Olive Chapel Road, across from the log house that they all shared previously, and that's the dwelling house that we are asking you to designate today. This house is, they chose, let me go back to that picture because this is really another family photo, but this family is a little bit more reasonable in size. This is the family, let's put it that way. Not everybody else, all the cousins. But Tom and Ed, they chose the Queen Anne style of architecture for their new home. It was very popular nationally. It was a tasteful statement of the family's local status, and these people were not wealthy, but they were fairly well-to-do in the whole Apex dynamic of the time. The size and style of the Tom Olive's house suggests that the family was doing well financially. Ina Olive died in 1919. Tom supported the family through general farming and owned the home outright. And he married Maddie Overton sometime after 1920, and then died of heart disease at the age of 73 in 1926. He was buried in the original family cemetery, Olive Family Cemetery, portion of the Olive Chapel Baptist Church. It's not known if Mattie Olive stayed in the house after Tom's death. She died in 1948 in Richmond, Virginia. James Gordon Olive and his wife, Pauline A. Olive, resided in the house from 1930 to the 1980s. James Gordon died in 1969, and beginning around 1980, Pauline started deeding shares, fractional shares, to her daughter, who is Shirley Olive Eakes Carraway. Shirley and her second husband, Harry F. Carraway, eventually occupied the house. And it was from them that the home passed to Lenore, Carolinas, and from Lenore to Mike Ingram, who is the current owner. Of course, Mike is just owning the .686 acre parcel that we're asking you to designate today. This is a picture. Mike's been working on this property, as you can see, and this is a picture of how the exterior looks right now. The 1905 section is roughly H-shaped, two-story wood frame building with a one-story front porch. This core section consists of parallel east and west wings joined by a central connector containing the interior stair hall. In 2019, a second story was added on top of the formerly one-story east wing. The east wing was extended to the rear to equal the length of the west wing. The east wing addition mirrors the original west wing with its cornice returns and beadboard soffits. A one-story shed roof addition projects from the rear north elevation. Corbelled interior chimneys rise from the roof ridge of both the east and west wings. Locally, the Queen Anne houses borrowed decorative elements from their high-style urban counterparts, but pared these down to be more appropriate in a rural setting. Key Queen Anne influence features of the Alsey Thomas Olive House are its fishtail shingles in the front gables, which you can see, the sawn brackets and pendants that top the cutaway bays, and a showpiece front porch of turnposts and balusters and arched spandrels. Probably one of the most significant features of the house is the front porch, which you see a side view of this. The porch is notable for its original vernacular Queen Anne decorative elements. The elements include 6 support posts with curved spandrels. The 3-part posts have a turned central section with rectangular top and bottom sections. This treatment is repeated in a truncated manner on the porch balustrade, which consists of closely spaced balusters set between a plain handrail bottom and bottom rail between the porch posts. The porch retains its original beadboard ceiling, and in 2019, the non-historic porch floor was replaced with a pine tongue and groove floorboards per its original construction. So I will say that the original weatherboarding still covers the house. The east L is covered with newly milled boards that match the original ones. The soffits are finished with beadboard. Plain corner boards are found throughout the house. All window and door openings exhibit plain wood surrounds with drip caps. The majority of the 2/2 double-hung wood sash windows remain in their original openings. New windows will be installed on the shed roof addition. Just go back to the slide we were looking at before. You see this blank space between the two gables. That will be, if you go to this one, you see there was a balustrade above the porch. That will be restored in the future as well, so that the front will basically look identical to what you see right here. And of course, all these changes that are made subsequent to landmarking will require COAs from the Preservation Commission. The house has as a rear view, so you see the addition. On the left is the addition, 2019 addition, and it was done to match the other side. That's the only thing that was really added to the space of the house that you see on the exterior. There's a few shots. You see this, the area at the top of these two drawings, that's the newer area that was added to give a little more space to a family, growing family in this house. I'm going to take you through a few pictures of the inside. I know it's late. Mike is still working on it. He can speak a little bit to that. He's done a completely new electric, plumbing, all of that stuff. Removed the historic beadboard. We'll be replacing that. There are fireplaces, there are mantles, I should say, on fireplaces throughout the house. The downstairs ones are more formal, the upstairs ones are a bit simpler. That's a downstairs one, obviously, so that's got a much more decoration to it. And the significant statement. In 1905, about 1905, Alsey Thomas Olive House, the 1905 Halsey Thomas Olive House is locally significant for its Queen Anne architecture. The house is historically associated with the Olive family, a multi-generational family of successful farmers and community leaders in western Wake County. The house possesses architectural significance as one of a dwindling number of surviving and intact rural Queen Anne-style houses in western Wake County. While the house's historic agricultural setting has been compromised by suburban development, it remains on its original site on land that was owned by the Olive family for 171 years, from 1846 to 2017. The dwelling retains excellent overall physical integrity and has experienced very limited changes to the exterior. The interior retains its original floor plan, and much of the interior finished materials have survived. Its preserved state informs us about popular taste, vernacular adaptations, and locally available and prevalent building materials and techniques that upper middle class families used in early 20th century western Wake County.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
And one more thing. The staff recommendation from the Wake County Historic Preservation Commission staff, we recommend that the Apex Town Council designate the Halsey Thomas Olive House located at 2708 Olive Chapel Road, Apex, as an Apex Historic Landmark and adopt the associated ordinance. And Mr. Hastings is here for the next one.
Thank you.
Second that thought real quick, Jeff Hastings, 3609 Friendship Road. At its meeting on December 10th, 2019, the Wake County Historic Preservation Commission unanimously recommended that the Apex Town Council designate the Halsey Thomas Olive House as an Apex Historic Landmark and adopt the associated ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Hastings.
Mr. Hastings, can you describe the process of that committee and how that works? Like, is it just a checklist, or is it more like a discussion of a discussion of the context, or if they check all the boxes, is it automatically get recommendation from you guys?
No. It's quite a process. It's usually initiated by the owner who says, I'd like you to take a look at this house. I think it might be landmark worthy. Staff will go take a look at the house. It'll present it to the designation committee of the Preservation Commission. They will make a signal go ahead, particularly if they desire to fund that particular application. Applications cost about $3,500 to do. So a consultant is hired who does a thorough report. That's where all this data came from, basically, who does a thorough report. That report is then presented to the Wake County Historic Preservation Commission. Staff makes a recommendation to them. They evaluate it, they consider it, and then they make the formal recommendation to you.
Okay.
So that's how it got to your point. But you are the ones, of course, who designate it. Only you can do that.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ingram, did you wish to speak?
Hi, Mayor, Council. I'm Mike Ingram, 2735 NC Highway 751, Apex, North Carolina. I'm proud owner of the house. I was glad to be able to work on it and help preserve it. I fully intend to be another person. We've seen several old houses here tonight. I agree with some of these folks that I think there was a great group of carpenters in the area 100 years ago that put their own personal touches on a lot of these amazing houses. I've worked on a lot of them myself. I live in one myself. I intend on being one of those folks that stand in front of it and take a family picture, just like the rest of them. And we should all want, everyone in Apex should have the same kind of pride that these folks did. I grew up here and I do. I appreciate your consideration for the designation on the house. I think it's a fine example of what Apex has to offer in the past and moving forward in the future, so I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Ingram. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you.
All right. We'll go ahead and open up public hearing. I have no one signed up tonight, so I'll close public hearing. Refer the matter to council for discussion and possible motion.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion second. Discussion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, that passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Move now to public hearing 5, Shelley Mayo, public hearing and possible motion to approve and adopt the resolution of the 2020-25 Wake County multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. It's a mouthful.
You stole my joke. I was going to say that 5 times fast. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to make this as brief as I possibly can because I know we've been here a little while. So in an effort to reduce the nation's natural hazard losses, the U.S. Congress passed 2 acts, both of which require state and local governments to develop hazard mitigation plans as a condition of federal mitigation grant assistance. Those 2 laws are listed here. Second one of these is actually a revision of the earlier one, and it makes it a requirement that jurisdictions update their hazard mitigation plans every 5 years. If the hazard mitigation plan expires and a new one is not adopted, that jurisdiction isn't eligible for those specific grants. Now, this is a specific subset of hazard mitigation grants. It is not all the money, but it's a nice big pot that we'd like to keep ourselves able to use. So, the town's first hazard mitigation plan was approved in 2004, and it's been updated every 5 years since then. The update includes a review of the last 5 years, a list of any hazard mitigation issues or problems that have occurred in the last 5 years, and a plan for the next 5 years. In 2014, Wake County and its municipalities joined together to develop the first multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. Before that, we'd all kind of done our own thing. We figured it was more cost-effective for our constituents and also better overall for everyone included to coordinate that and make sure that we're all kind of on the same page, because what happens in Cary doesn't necessarily stay in Cary. It might spill over here, might spill over to Morrisville, that kind of thing. So if we're all on the same page, we can all react a little bit better. That plan is scheduled to expire next month. So we've been working on a revised plan for about the last year or so. This new one will keep us compliant with federal regulations. The state actually hired the wood company as our contractor for this, and this will last from 2020 until 2025. The citizens and businesses in Apex are really the ultimate beneficiary of the hazard mitigation plan. This is the town's and the surrounding jurisdictions' attempt to kind of reduce how much of an impact any of these hazards can have on us, to the extent that that's possible. Each year, the hazard mitigation plan members meet to discuss and review the action plan within it. In order to prepare for the updated overall plan, we met a number of different times in the last year. There's a list on page 2 of your staff report that tells you all of the people involved in that. Some of them have gotten new titles, some of them have retired, but everybody who was involved is listed in here for you. Just to give you an idea, hazard mitigation planning really is a process. It's got a number of different steps, but these are kind of the core ones. And it's something that we engage in to try to reduce the vulnerabilities associated with certain natural risks and hazards. The core steps are organizing the planning process and resources, assessing the risks that affect our jurisdiction, and the capabilities that we have, both to prevent and to respond to hazards, developing a mitigation strategy, and adopting and implementing the plan. Everybody in Wake County participated in this particular plan, all of the jurisdictions, all the individual municipalities, and the county. We evaluated this list of hazards, and we assigned certain criteria to them. Just because something is the most likely on the list does not mean that it's going to have the biggest impact or that it will have the longest term impact. We might have a thunderstorm, which we get about once a week during the summer, that wipes out power, knocks over a power line and affects one neighborhood for an hour. It might also knock out power to a few neighborhoods for 10 hours. So we looked at all of those different things and kind of assigned them a critical order, and that's listed in the actual plan itself. Within the action plan, or within the hazard mitigation plan, there's an action plan for each jurisdiction. Our plan is listed in Annex C, which starts on page 310 of the overall plan. This is kind of the core of the hazard mitigation plan. It outlines a variety of mitigation actions by each department, gives some priorities and target dates for completion. Many of these items are also listed in the town CIP, so we've already decided to fund a lot of these things, and we just decided to also roll them in. It's easier to get federal funding if you have things in multiple different plans. The plan also recommends an annual report outlining progress on the mitigation action implementation, and we will be following that in the incoming years. Just to kind of give you an idea of some of the things that have been completed since the last time we did this. In 2014, we planned to do an erosion and sedimentation control regulations. We've adopted those. They're in force. We've been using them for quite a while now. We've constructed fire station number 5. We've updated the town's website with a whole bunch of public access and emergency information on there. We keep that updated on a regular basis. And we didn't have a FEMA flood map link on the website beforehand. We do now. Some ongoing items, things that have kind of continued on from that time frame. I'm not going to read all of these to you guys. I'm just going to pick out some highlights. One of them is building the Middle Creek Greenway and the White Oak Creek Greenway. Those are both under construction right now, so we should be able to take those off the list pretty soon. Using the town website and our utility bills to announce National Preparedness Month and just remind people to keep it in mind as they're going about their normal life. And then we plan to post some warning signage at local parks for lightning strikes. It's actually something that we don't think about, but happens fairly often. We've got some new items that we put on here. Again, I'm not going to read all of these to you, but I'll pick out a few of them for you. One of my favorites is that we've added creating a stormwater utility to fund the town's stormwater program. Adopting and enforcing the fire prevention code, standard stuff. We've also got relocating the Beaver Creek sewer line out of the creek. This is to address flood issues, and that's mostly so that we don't have an issue when it floods, because nobody wants that color water coming towards them. Also, we've got 2 pages of these, building Jessie Drive and finishing the Peakway Loop Road. Both of these will do a huge amount to improve the connectivity and emergency response times across the town. And if we ever do have to evacuate, it will make it much faster and much easier for everybody involved once we get those done. And then, of course, constructing fire stations 6 and 7 as well. The NC Division of Emergency Management and FEMA have both completed state and federal reviews of the plan and announced that the plan does comply with federal emergency management regulations. In order for them to issue a formal approval, the town and the other Wake County jurisdictions must submit documentation of final public meeting and adoption. Planning staff recommends approval of the plan, and Planning Board heard this at the December 9th meeting. They also unanimously voted to recommend approval. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them to the best of my abilities.
I have a question related to folks who are medically fragile or have some developmental disabilities or delays, and they live alone, or what would we do as far as getting material to them, or people who are visually impaired? How do we make sure if there's some event that we handle people who are like that or have another issue that they would have to think about?
That's an excellent question. It's not one that was brought up during our most recent planning sessions, but it is something that we can definitely give some thought to and work on doing better on that. It's not something that's incorporated in this plan right now, but we can put it on our list of things to work on and make sure that that's part of next year's update.
Thank you.
And hopefully get that implemented before next year.
So I read the whole thing, by the way, so it wasn't a waste of time for everybody. With the Apex items, how did it work exactly? Did other municipalities comment on Apex's things, or vice versa, and say that's not good enough, or needs to happen?
It's not so much that we said that's not good enough. Everybody had the opportunity to comment on one another's information, and a lot of times we actually would So we had several meetings, 4 or 5 of them at the very least, and we would get together and say things like, well, I'm having trouble figuring out additional things that I can do in my jurisdiction, because it's normally one point person who then goes back to their municipality and works with everybody else. And they're saying, okay, well, so flooding is our biggest issue. Well, we're kind of already built out in a lot of ways, and we're trying to figure out how to best address this. And so we would actually sit around and give each other ideas. I stole 1 or 2 things from a couple jurisdictions, suggestions. They stole a few things from ours. So we all it was more of a blending of ideas and less of a critique. And everybody was doing their best to try to get the best ideas that we could that were also feasible. We didn't want to do pie in the sky ideas that we didn't have any idea of how to implement, but we wanted to go through and figure out both small and large ideas that we could actually implement within the next 5 years that would make a big difference for our communities. Because sometimes it's the little things, sometimes it's the really big things.
Okay.
But it was more of a collaborative process than a critical process, if that makes sense.
Okay. I think it was smart to do this as a whole county. I think that was a good move in 2014. And I'm glad now that that's also leading to, not only is it easier probably to write, but also leading to those kind of collaborations.
We had some really good conversations. It was eye-opening because not everybody was a planner, not everybody was a firefighter. So.
Is there any discussion about talking about the areas that are high flood-prone areas that we may need to go back in and do some things for at some point?
There were. Apex actually has a remarkably sturdy program in place. For one thing, we've since 2005, since the mid-2000s at the very least, we've prohibited building any kind of new buildings within the floodplain. We've prohibited any development within our jurisdiction in the floodplain. That's not something that most jurisdictions have done. Most jurisdictions still allow it, but they require a minimum base finished floor elevation above the floodplain. And the problem with doing it that way is that as you get more buildings in there, the height of the floodplain actually rises. So it becomes more of an issue. So we don't actually suffer from catastrophic flooding on a housing level. We've not had a single floodplain insurance request or claim filed in the last 20 years. What we do have issues with sometimes is what's considered, and don't take this the wrong way, it's called nuisance flooding. It's the type of flooding that is a pain and can cause problems, but is not typically going to destroy your home and is not typically going to completely wash out a road. That said, we do have some roads that overtop. And that's been something that Water Resources and Public Works have been looking at for years as far as addressing. Kelly Road was recently completely redone. I think that finished 3 years ago, and that was partly to address the issue of overtopping out there. So it is something that we're aware of and something that we work on to make sure that we can kind of continually have plans to do that. So.
Could you enlighten me about what level of commitment is implied by having an item in this list? I know many of these things are already on the SIP. And what does it mean to staff to have something on this list?
It's a guiding list. It's something that we look at when we're trying to make recommendations as far as funding and things along those lines. It is not in stone, as it were. It's not something that we are promising to the federal government or even the state that we will accomplish within this time frame. We have a few things that have been carried over from multiple plan revisions because, well, they're important, but we have critical and important things on here as well. So sometimes the important ones get pushed aside a little bit.
Right.
So this is mostly a wish list.
Okay.
It is stuff that we think is important and that we plan on working on, but it is not necessarily something that we will be held accountable by the government for.
Is everything on this list already on our SIP?
Not everything. Some of these things, so like keeping the town website updated with the Sharon Harris.
I meant like capital projects like the
Um,
fire station.
Everything that's a capital project is listed in the CIP, yes.
Any other questions for Ms. Mayo? All right, thank you. All right, I'll open up public hearing and close public hearing, being that no one has signed up, and refer the matter to council for discussion. Any discussion?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion and second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. All opposed, no. All right, that passes unanimously. We'll move to public hearing 6. Ms. Diane Ken.
All right, good evening. So this is a public hearing and possible motion to adopt an ordinance on the question of annexation. This is the Tim and Lauren Medlin property containing 1.929 acres at 6517 Rosendale Court. Rosendale Court is in our northernmost portion of our jurisdiction here. And it is a property that is near the Sutton Place neighborhood, and it's off Twin Creek Road. And here we go, this is better. So you can see that they are adjoining annexed property on 3 sides. They are seeking town services, particularly public utilities. There is both water and sewer nearby. Staff does recommend approval of the annexation.
Any questions? All right, thank you. All right, I'll open up public hearing and close public hearing. No one has signed up. And refer the matter to council. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I second it.
Motion second. Discussion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, that passes. Move on now to public hearing number 7. Citizen input regarding the formulation of fiscal year 2021 annual budget, presented by Assistant Town Manager Sean Purvis.
Yes, Mayor and Council, if it pleases you, I'll just sit up here because it's not a presentation at this point. This is simply opening this for public comment. It's not a requirement of the budget process. This is actually very early, and it's not about numbers at this point. It's just about any feedback, if there's at all from council or the public, really, about programs, initiatives, things that as we get into the heavy lifting of the budget, then there's things that we were able to talk about with you and staff, so we can start compiling numbers at this point. So that's very preliminary, very, very high level. So it's just opening it up for public comment at this point.
Okay.
Is the public input at this stage in the process more valuable than like toward the end, or is it all kind of?
It's all more is relative. It's all valuable because it's just a different phase. You know, when we get closer to the numbers, when we start presenting the actual puzzle pieces, it's easier for people to see where the money goes and have different comments or ideas about what maybe the priority should be. At this point, it's really just, it is important to hear if there's any interest, because if there's things that council or the public want us to start looking at, it's better to know that now and be able to start compiling those numbers and doing research on those projects versus if first time we hear about it, it's at an April workshop, then we can do it, but it's it's a lot more, the time crunch is a little more heavy of a lift. The same reason now, most of those of you who've been on it know, we've actually already started our capital improvement project process. Those projects are submitted in October, and we've gone through that to kind of catalog that. Staff has done some rankings on it. We're compiling it now to be in a better format or easier to read format that will come to you in a few weeks as soon as we get through the holidays, and then you have your retreat. We'll get those priorities in, and then it's off to council. So it's the same sort of thing as for overall initiatives at this point. We're just trying to get as much information as we can. So it's all valuable throughout the year. We get other comments throughout the year too. It's just a time to open it up.
Would you say that the capital projects, feedback of those might be the more useful right now, and then the programmatic would be more useful later?
Not necessarily. Capital projects, I mean, while they are typically, the costs can be significant, you can identify a project and it sometimes is a little bit more manageable to put together. So feedback from that, we'll get that enough. It's a little bit easier to wrap your mind or your hands around the capital projects. So we do a lot to get information on that between staff and council and then putting it out on making it available on the website. So all that's out there for review. So it doesn't necessarily have to be capital. Anything helps. I mean, if anyone has it on capital, capital is though usually supporting some larger initiative that council has going on, or it's something that we may have a mandate to do or we need to do anyway. Fire stations, for instance. We know we need to get a new fire station out in the northwestern part of town. So those projects are coming. The hard part becomes where do we place it? Because we have to consider what the need is and in the community, as well as what the financial cost and burden is to the town and the taxpayer at that point.
So are you looking for input from us as well, or are you looking for that?
Not necessarily. At this point, it's really more about the public. Y'all are always welcome to stop by my office and give me input if you want, but this is more about the public at this point.
This is a tradition here that we have this for public input prior to getting into the heavy lifting on the budget. The council obviously then has a lot of other points of input, but this kind of formally kicks off the public input for it. We also have it a special email address that'll be pushed out on social media for people to use. All those comments then still come back to the council, so you'll see all the email input. And
you've got plenty of workshops coming up.
Yeah.
You got lots of workshops coming up to be able to talk. Yeah, yeah. You don't have to worry about that now. We'll get there.
Mr. Purvis, for the record and those here, could you remind people of what the special email address is, and then talk about any additional things like utility bill or others for folks who are not constantly on the
computer? At this point, there is a budget website. If you go to the town's website, and even up in the top banner on the government side, there's a direct link to budget. You can go there, and it has where our current budget is. That's where our current budget is located on the file. And then there's also some discussion about the budget, some quick snapshots, and as well as the link to the website, which is, or the email, I'm sorry, it's an odd email, but it's annual.budget@apexnc.org. And we've actually pushed that out on social media this week, which a little later in this, but we've pushed that out. We'll continue to push that out as we're in the budget. When we get a little more into the budget cycle, it'll be one of the home banners typically. That email comes to, I think Mr. Havens can see that, as well as our budget team and myself will see those. They're always welcome to my direct email, any of our budget staff direct email, call, come by. We're open to any comments and always willing to walk through any piece of the document that's needed.
Could we get a summary of that maybe at some point, maybe once a month or something like that? But
As far if we're getting any comments that we're getting, sure.
So last year you received every comment that we got, which was not, the prior year there was several pages of document that the council received.
Yeah. Most of those come in March and April.
But yes,
May,
you will get
yeah.
updates.
So are you saying strategies to engage the public or through social media, town website, and maybe some mailers through utility bills? Is that right?
We can do the mailers.
Yeah.
We can definitely look at doing mailers. I'm trying to think what we put out. We prepare kind of the one-sheeter handouts. I don't know exactly off the top of our communications about how they're put out, but we definitely social media outreach, the website outreach, any public notices and hearings that we have. And even your workshops they're open. I mean, it's you working. There's citizens there to be able to observe, but they're there as well.
Yeah, and what about through the email blast? I think that we should have a broad communications plan around this.
Sure.
It's a little concerning. Not a lot of people showed up. I would have thought that.
It's
one thing people would come out and.
It's actually not unusual.
Yeah.
This is
disappointing.
Yeah, more people come later on in the year, and I think the biggest piece of that right now is that it is such a high level, and when people start actually seeing the numbers, then they're able to really wrap their minds around it a little bit easier and start having some ideas. Right now, it's pretty intangible. So.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Purvis? All right. I'll open up public hearing. We do have one person here. Bridget Taylor. Please come up.
All right.
I'm Bridget Taylor, 226 Harbor Haven Drive. I actually had some questions. Your past budget, you guys have money in here. One, you do not explain what the money goes to. First one is on there that caught my attention is cemetery. There should be no money for the cemetery. 1975, there was a state law. When you sell a plot or a headstone, that money has to go into a trust. The cemetery gets a budget on upkeep of that cemetery. You're up to $60,000 for a cemetery that you should be paying zero. I don't know what you're doing with the money, but that's a slush fund. So the other question I had on it was, you had a retiree OPED. How many retirees do you have between the ages of 55 and 62 that you used $750,000? There's 503 people that work for this city. You don't need $675,000 for that project. Then you added into it $150,000. This was 2000. You added $150,000 for the special conditions for the police officers. Again, how many police officers do you have in that range? You don't have those type of people to be taking $750,000 out of the budget. Now, what you're going to do this year, I don't know, but I would hope that you're not taking any more money out of the budget for retirees when you don't have that many people. It's for insurances and things of that nature. You don't have those type of people. There should not be a fund for that when those people don't exist. We don't have enough people in this city that works, that have retired from it, that fit the criteria of 55 to 62, no matter which way, 30 years or 5 years. We don't have those people that have retired at 55 to 62 for you to be taking $750,000 out of the budget. That money can be used for improvements for the road or the sidewalks or whatever the case may be. The cemetery, you really need to explain that. And when you do your budgets, I don't need the history of Apex. I can find that in many places. I would like the information for what you're spending the money on, more detail in telling me, where did you spend $285 for the town council? It's not even in this. And you do not answer your emails. I sent one 2 days ago.
I got it. It was sent yesterday, ma'am, and I just got it this morning.
Okay.
I will definitely respond to it, and I'm more than happy to speak
Because
with you afterward.
the information, when I was searching through your 285 pages, it's not there.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming out. All right, I'll close the hearing. No action necessary by council. All right, that concludes all the business that I have here. No closed sessions, no work sessions. So I just want to say happy holidays to everyone. This is the last meeting of the year, and meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
On 18 inches. You know how many that's going to count? And then 1.5. That's in front of it. It's facing toward.
Yeah, not check this as a full process, not lab.